And Pro, I mean, look, we've been covering this together for some time. Everybody asks questions about DEI,
Brothers in arms, we've been at this.
yeah, and ESG, but we've never really kind of sat down and done a whole thing on this. So
Nope.
you get a lot of comments on your channel. I get a lot of comments on my channel. Tell the folks here, what are some of the most common comments and things that you hear out there that you think we should address today about things like BlackRock or Vanguard or ESG or DEI, and what type of control or lack of control they have over this? Because I think this is where people kind of get off the rails with things, and it's something that we need to talk about. I know you've seen a lot of these comments, so I don't know if you have any in
Sure.
particular in mind that you kind of want to go
Well, I
into
get a lot
here.
of, well, actually, I get a lot of comments just asking if we'll cover this and explain it. A lot of people have heard about this kind of stuff, but they have not, they don't know it in specificity how it works. And so you get a lot of people who have heard the buzzwords, they know that BlackRock is something, and they know that BlackRock controls Disney somehow. You'll also hear a lot of comments about, is Disney, how much money has Disney given to BlackRock, or how much money has BlackRock given to Disney, and all this sort of thing. Um, People know the acronyms DEI and ESG, but often they don't know anything beyond like the Reimagine Tomorrow. And one of the interesting things is that even when you start talking about Reimagine Tomorrow and these pushes and the connections with institutional investors, you still get even the top notch investigative journalists like Christopher Rufo, who still have some issues lining up exactly who at Disney is doing what, i.e., is it Iger, is it Chapek that's wanting to push the company, in a radical or moderate direction. So I think it's just great for us to sit down and go through this and break it down and explain to people exactly what is BlackRock, what is Vanguard, how are they connected with Disney? Because they're not just connected with Disney; they're connected. They're intricately connected throughout the entire economy.
Yeah.
So let's break it down exactly what it is they have to do with Disney that matters with that company versus why do we not see this at Warner Brothers? Why did we not see this at Paramount, et cetera?
And BlackRock and Vanguard and all these other they own large portions of stock in other companies like
Sure.
Comcast or Warner Brothers
And you
or
might think of these
Paramount.
things as being like you might think of these as being huge repositories for the vast investments of Americans and perhaps more,
Yep.
the vast repositories of retirement funds, and then they're managed by people who may or may not do well, who may or may not have the interests of those investors at the top of their minds, or perhaps they have some sort of weird economic theory or ideology at the top of their minds. But whatever the case may be, when we're talking about these entities, we're really talking about the American people. This is their money.
Right. And the power of this comes in. I'm going to pull this up right now so people can kind of understand.
Well, let me say this too. So, like, I have major investments in Vanguard, right? We're talking about my money. Now, I'm teeny weeny. I'm tiny.
Right.
I'm sure you've got some money in these entities. So, this is your money, and the people in the audience, even if they don't know it, probably a bunch of their investments are held by these. And so, this is all of our money. It's just being managed in these huge piles by people who should be experts and should be using it to try to facilitate the growth of the economy and of all of our investments as best as possible. But when it comes to Disney, there's something odd here.
Yeah, and mutual fund companies, whether it's Vanguard, BlackRock, or American Funds, or T. Rowe Price, or you throw any name out there, there's lots and lots and lots of different mutual fund companies out there. BlackRock happens to be one of the biggest, right, or the biggest in terms of assets under management. Customers who come in and say, "Here's my 401k money. Here's my IRA money. I'm going to put some of it in a Vanguard fund. I might put some of it in a BlackRock fund. Some of it might go to T. Rowe. Some of it I just go up and buy Apple stock with, or whatever the case."
Right. Also, you've got these. So you've also got huge amounts of money coming into these from the government, right? Through pensions and all kinds of things.
Pensions and other things will use professional money managers like BlackRock and Vanguard and many, 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 many others, right? So what people look at, and because people kind of have this misconception that, oh, well, they got, Disney's been propped up by BlackRock money and all this kind of stuff. It's like, I don't know what that means. Nobody's been able to explain that to me. Because, I mean, look, these mutual fund companies, people have these ideas that they have like buckets of cash in the back room they're shoveling into places like Disney. Cover the losses here and no, none of that. That doesn't happen. None of that is happening. The power of places like BlackRock, and this is what people need to understand. So when we look at ESG and DEI, BlackRock, because of their ownership of certain stock, right? They own 7 to 8% or so of the outstanding shares of the Walt Disney Company, right? So let's bring this up. Let me show everybody how this works. Okay?
And they own that on behalf of all of the investors who are invested in them.
Those are assets under management. Exactly.
Right, exactly. Okay.
Yeah. Walt Disney Company. This is where it's at right now. And I'm not going to sit here and do a stock breakdown. This isn't an advice to buy or sell or anything Disney stock or otherwise. This is just
seek out your own financial advisor for all of your advice that you need in terms of finances, ladies and gentlemen.
Exactly. So let's look at this. I want everybody to pay attention to this line. Whoop, a little too far. This line right here. See this line? Market cap. Now, what that means is market cap is this is what the Walt Disney Company is worth according to the open market. Meaning that if I take all of these $101.14 individual shares of the Walt Disney Company, and I take all of those and I multiply them by the number of outstanding shares that are floating out on the market, I'm going to come up with $184.764 billion is the value of the Walt Disney Company at the close of the bell Friday. If it jumps up $20 a share tomorrow, that 184 is going to jump up 20%. It's going to go to $240 million or whatever, 235. So this is a flash. This is what people have to look at, right? You look at market cap. So let's go over here. So $184 billion for the Walt Disney Company. And if we go to, that's the wrong one.
By the way, while you're searching for that, I wish that I could create a fake account really quick for Wilford Brimley and put a parody of "This Is Why I Buy." What was the type of diabetes stuff he would sell?
I don't remember what it was.
I can't remember either. I wish I could do that quick after Flash did that and be like, Wilford Brimley, this is what I buy for my diabetes.
So here's BlackRock. Now, don't pay attention. This is where people get confused. Don't pay attention to the per share price. That doesn't make a difference. Some companies have far more outstanding shares than others. Some people do splits, reverse splits, so on and so forth. This is BlackRock. Okay? Look at that market cap figure. 100 billion. It's half of Disney's, roughly.
Yep.
Okay? BlackRock, as a company, half the size of Walt Disney. And Walt Disney's by far and away not the biggest kid out there. I mean, Walt Disney is 1/10 the size of Apple and Google and Amazon and stuff. So that's BlackRock. Okay. Now, of course, that doesn't include their assets under management. Okay. The trillions of dollars that are held in trust. And I do mean a trust, right? In trust that they manage on behalf of you, me, everybody else out there. Now, what do they do with those assets, right? They go out there and they will buy stock. And they'll buy stock in companies like Disney or Apple or everybody else out there, depending on, hey, we have a mutual fund that's designed to be a large cap growth fund. So we need to buy companies that fit into that Morningstar style box. Companies like Google and Netflix, the FANG stocks, Meta, which formerly Facebook or whatever the hell they're calling themselves now. Okay, large cap growth, stuff like that, giant cap stocks. The problem that's happened over time, this is where DEI and ESG has come in and polluted the waters, is that, there's this notion out there that these big investment companies, whether they're BlackRock or they're JP Morgan Chase or anybody else here, okay, is that those companies, they are going to say, okay, well, you know what? Instead of just going after best growth or best this or best the other thing, we want to invest in companies that are being the most environmentally friendly and trying to engage in diversity hiring practices or trying to do anything other than make more money, right? The goal of any of these BlackRocks or Vanguards out there should be to do the correct by their clients. They have a fiduciary responsibility. We're trying to grow the client's assets. We should be investing in companies that are trying to grow themselves to provide us the most returns possible for our clients. But if we as BlackRock are going around and saying, well, look, Disney, we got 8% of your stock or 5% of your stock, or whatever the hell it is. we need you to come sit down with us. We want to talk to you about, some things that we think your company should be doing. Disney's going to have to listen to this, okay? When you own 1%. Look at what Nelson Peltz did
Right,
with
that's what I was saying. The
half.
same way Peltz was able to curry an audience.
With 0.5% of Disney stock. Vanguard owns 16 times what Peltz had, or so. So they're going to come in there and going to say, well, we want you to do this. We want you to have more diversity, equity, and inclusion in there. Their power comes in through their voting and their influence over the executive management and over the board itself. When they put out a vote, like it's coming up next month for the Walt Disney Company, 8% of every share that is going to be cast will be cast by BlackRock in this case. Maybe another 7% from Vanguard.
So let's say this too then, Valiant. Mm-hmm. Let's also say that when you're looking at a BlackRock or a Vanguard and they're putting potentially these restrictions or suggestions to companies like Disney where they're saying you must adhere to the ESG or DEI or intersectionality or critical race ideas that are out there. You must take these into consideration. And we believe that it's better for the company if you do so, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
They do that outside the behest of their investors.
Correct.
So the average, Smith and Jones and Lopez that's out there investing their funds, their retirements in these companies, they typically don't have a say, and they typically don't have a care as to what these companies are saying to these other companies. They just check the mail maybe every quarter and go, oh, cool, I made another $100 in my investments.
Right. That's it. I mean, and it should be the priority to have a company driving towards making the most money, not spending time and capital trying to reduce a carbon footprint by whatever, BS metric they've come up with, or to hire people based on skin color to meet a diversity quota, as opposed to let's just hire the best people out there. They may be full of diversity when you do that. But the problem is that they want these companies to be more socially conscious. And that has nothing to do whatsoever with making money, as we can see evident in a lot of the products that get put out from places like Disney. Now, Disney just happens to be...
So let's say this, Valiant. Mm-hmm. What's really going on there, almost certainly, is institutional capture by political forces. So the political forces figured out we don't have to be the ones who invest the money into these giant funds. We just have to manage putting our people in charge of managing those funds.
Right.
And then we'll take the average Jones, Smith, and Lopez, and we'll use their money. And they don't, they're not involved in this. They have, major jobs and families that they're taking care of. They don't have the time to pay attention to what we're doing. But we'll put our political forces at the top, and then we'll use all of their money, all of the American retirement system money, all the American investment money to push companies, push corporate America into our ideological vision for the future.
Yes, but with one huge stipulation, and I need the audience to understand this very,
Stipulate
very clearly.
away.
When you say use the American public's money, remember, they're using the American public's money that's legitimately invested in a company like a Disney or an Apple or whomever.
Sure.
But when you do that through a Vanguard or a BlackRock, as opposed to buying that stock yourself, you're turning over your voting proxy to the mutual fund company. You may have the equivalent of 100 shares of Disney in a pile of mutual funds that you own. But you have conveyed your proxy to BlackRock or Vanguard or whoever else is the custodian of those funds to vote your share. That's where the power comes in for BlackRock. They can vote those shares. It's not a matter of shoving a bunch of money into Disney in the back door or to anybody else. And I want to make abundantly clear that people understand when BlackRock goes out or Vanguard goes out or any of these other companies go out and they buy 5% of Disney stock, outstanding Disney stock, virtually, and when I say virtually, I mean pretty much $0, unless there's something special, which I'll explain in a minute. But generally speaking, $0 of that purchase goes back to, in this case, Disney. 0. Because most stock, almost 99, 100%, almost every bit of stock that's out there, okay, generally speaking, unless a company is going to release. Remember we talked about earlier with AMC? That's why I brought this up. Remember when I said AMC got meme stocked? What did AMC do to bail itself out with its cash crunch? It dumped a bunch of treasury stock. It dumped a bunch of stock that AMC corporate held on its own into the open market. Now, that's when a BlackRock or JP Morgan or Mom and Joe Smith could come in and buy up some of that treasury stock. That's an incredibly rare thing when you hear of stock buybacks and all that kind of stuff. Otherwise, all that stock is bought in the secondary market, meaning when BlackRock is going out buying shares or Vanguard is going out buying shares, they're buying it from somebody else, not Disney. They're buying it from somebody else that already owns it. It's like going out and selling a used car at that point and maybe making a little profit on it, maybe taking a loss on it. But you're not paying. If you went and bought a Toyota for $20,000 and you turned around and you sold it for $15,000, none of that's going back to Toyota when you resell it. If you made money on it, like in 2021 when people were selling used cars for profits and you turn around and you sold that Corolla for $25,000 2 days after you bought it, none of that's going to Toyota. I mean, so it's the same thing here. So even when you own that much stock, none of that money's going to Disney. It's staying in the secondary market. That's the vast majority of the stock. Unless Disney issues a bunch of treasury stock out there and somebody picks it up on the open market. But that doesn't matter if it's BlackRock or Joe Smith. Or it's a bunch of Joe Smiths usually. But in any case, I want everybody to kind of understand how that works.
Okay, so why, in your opinion, Valiant, is Disney so heavily influenced by these sociopolitical pushes, ESG, DEI, Reimagine Tomorrow, etc., versus the other companies which have similar investments from these major institutional investors?
Wait, I dropped that on me in the last second there.
Okay, so why do you think that Disney is so heavily influenced by ESG, DEI, Reimagine Tomorrow, intersectionality, versus these other companies which are seemingly equally invested into by these institutional investors, but Disney is different? What makes them so heavily influenced?
I think they're willing participants in it. I think that's what it boils down to. I mean, we've talked to death about Iger and his politics, right? They live in California, and Disney's certainly not alone. They're probably more into it than most other entertainment companies, I might argue.
So to clarify though, there's not some sort of secret back channel system. There's not some sort of secret, investor scheme between these companies and Disney that is forcing Disney to go in a direction that Disney would not otherwise go. This is coming from Disney's leadership. Disney wants to do this.
The leadership willingly has to go along with it, right? I mean, look, BlackRock is out there, as you said, all these other companies. If they want to go down this road and they want to, hey, everybody come in and have a conference. We want to talk to you about making your workplace more diverse and engaging in this program. We'd like to see you spend money here. We'd like to see you spend money there. The company can just say, no. What's going to happen? Maybe BlackRock tries to replace some of your board members because they have the voting power to do it. That could happen too. Not that frequent though. But look, the point is a lot of this is coming unglued because I wanted to pull this up. Everybody throws Vanguard in there. I want to remind everybody, Vanguard's kind of getting fed up with all this.
Glad to hear it.
December 7th, Vanguard quits the net zero climate effort. Now, what is this? This is something that people like the WEF and all this, they want to get all these big money managers in there and get them all to commit. Hey, we want to make sure that you're investing your clients' money in companies that are friendly to what we want, right? In Vanguard, to their credit, and let me give you a more recent article because this is the one I really want to use. Right here, Vanguard's CEO. This is from this past week in the Wall Street Journal. Bucking the ESG orthodoxy. Tim Bucky pulls out of the Net Zero Managers Initiative and affirms his fiduciary duty to clients. Now, let me explain to you why this is coming to a head. Tim Bucky's the CEO of Vanguard, and he's looking at this like any reasonable person is, look, we tried this, but here's the deal. We cannot commit to promising all this crap to these groups and all this that would like, okay, I mean, it sounds great. Let's invest in environmentally friendly this and diversity that and help. But at the end of the day, if we're not putting our clients' interest first, meaning if we're not investing in companies that we feel are going to have the best growth, regardless of any of this other social political BS, then we're not doing our jobs.
Well, and let's say this too, Valiant. Partially that has to be because Vanguard wants to have a better yield. They want to have a better product. They want to have better services than these other competitors
Yeah.
competing with them for all of these funds that people are trusting them with. So if Vanguard is looking at it and saying, you know what, we can't come out on top, right? We cannot produce a better investment result doing this net zero crap, then Vanguard, you know, unless they're just completely ideologically captured, they're going to say, let's drop it and let's try to get, you know, let's get ahead of our competitors. That's the free market at work, ideally.
Yeah. And look at this. Our research indicates that ESG investing does not have any advantage over broad-based investing. This is what he said in a statement just in the last couple of weeks.
I am shocked to my core.
Matching word to deed, his comments came after he'd withdrawn his firm from the $59 trillion with a T Net Zero Asset Managers Initiative, an organization that is part of the $150 trillion United Nations affiliated Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero.
Wonder how many minor countries' GDPs could be consumed by that.
Yeah, right? So they're all getting together. It's like, hey, look, everybody start investing your money in companies that do this, that, and the other thing. And when they say investing the money, and it doesn't mean write a check to that company. No, it means go out and we want you to hold these companies' stock and all this kind of stuff because blah, blah, blah. It doesn't work. And where this really came to a head, and I talked about this a few weeks ago, and that was that when the Biden administration started going after retirement plans, because 401ks and pensions and all this are governed under something specific called ERISA. Okay, the Employee Retirement Income Securities Act. And ERISA is very clear that any ERISA or that any fiduciary that's engaging in the management or advice of a retirement plan should be acting solely and above anything else in the best interest of the retirement plan participants.
Seems like common sense, or it used to be.
Right. And what did the Biden administration throw down as an executive order or try to recently? Basically saying that they're opening up ERISA they're opening up retirement plans to be ESG directed, right? And then you now have 25, it's probably closer to 30 now, but 25 states attorneys generals, half the country has filed a lawsuit against the Biden administration for that. Why? Because no. The whole point of ERISA is so that these plans do nothing but give advice based on what is best for the client, not some not getting engaged in politics or some type of cultural Marxism or anything else like this. We shouldn't be looking at anything else other than what's right for these clients. So this is where all this is coming to a head. And with a Vanguard that is seemingly indicating, look, we're not playing this game anymore. This is stupid. That doesn't mean that Vanguard's going to come out tomorrow and campaign against DEI or campaign against ESG.
Right.
But when one of these little pieces in the house of cards start to fall, especially a piece as big as Vanguard, they're one of the biggest 3 or 4 kids on the block. That's when you're going to start seeing others go, oh, Vanguard's walking away. We don't need to be. I mean, look, you can still have ESG based funds. They have these socially conscious mutual funds in all of these mutual fund companies. You can go find them anywhere. They still want to have an ESG fund in there and all that kind of stuff to say, well, look, you want to feel like you're being a socially conscious investor because whatever. You're still going to own companies like Apple and all this other kind of stuff. It's most of the same things. Yeah, then have the funds. Serve that audience, that's fine. But as far as like this big, globalist directive to everything needs to be invested and directed by ESG, that's when they go in and they start, trying to shake down like these oil companies and all this other kind of stuff. And that's when you get the meddling, right? It's not infusions of cash into companies like Disney. It's the meddling that they can do from a socio-political standpoint and applying pressure to these boards and to these directors by saying, look, we have a line of credit. Look, we have, that we're lending you if you're JP Morgan Chase Bank. Or look, we have 8% of your voting shares outstanding. We can replace your board if we like. They don't have to pump money in. And there's not any money getting pumped in anyway.
Well, I hope people are waking up to just how atrocious the whole ESG thing is. It sounds nice in theory. The acronym is MADE in order to make you think that it's altruistic and that it's positive. But just to give you an idea of how horrendous just the environmental side of it is, okay?
Hmm.
If you were to travel and to stick this with something related to what I cover, right? I cover tourism and entertainment and Walt Disney World. If you travel southwest of Disney World on I-4, you will eventually come to a place called Plant City, which is west of Lakeland.
Hmm.
And that corridor between Lakeland and Tampa, okay, where Plant City is, Tampa and Lakeland, that used to be what was essentially a wildlife corridor for all of West Florida, right? So it connected, let's say, Babcock Ranch Preserve, and even the Evergreens with Richland Wildlife Management Area and going up the west coast of Florida. Well, because of ESG, okay, because of these companies all buying into this environmental wing of that,
Hmm.
they all started building tons and tons and tons of solar farms in Florida. But
Those look great, don't they?
because, right, because they got to be net zero, right? Well, these idiots, I mean, this just almost is to the point of being evil. It's just so stupid. So they have flooded all of West Florida between Lakeland and Tampa with solar farms to the point they have devastated, destroyed, utterly ravaged the environment in that area to the point that wildlife can no longer travel up the west side of Florida, to the point that they have eradicated vast, vast amounts of forest and capture carbon capturing trees, if I can possibly speak. Um, but that's the level of stupidity. And anybody who wants to go on and look at Google Maps can see this. It's the issue of unintended consequences when you take these acronyms and you apply them to real life without actually thinking them through as a high resolution. So you have all these companies, in Florida that are they're trying to get that ESG, they're trying to get their ESG score up. They want to get that environmental side of it.
Right.
We got to build the solar farms. We got to build the solar farms. Where's everybody building the solar farms? Oh, they're building between Tampa and Lakeland. Great. Oh, wait. We just wiped out vast swaths of forest, wildlife habitat, and we prevented wildlife from being able to travel up the entire west side of Florida. Well, but we got our solar farms.
Yeah, and ESG is basically that's the TikTok of the corporate world right now. It's like what's popular on TikTok this week? What are all the stupid kids doing on TikTok? Well, ESG is what they're doing on Wall Street. Now, of course, it's got a longer time of gestation the way it stays out there. But the more the things that we see like this with Vanguard turn a corner, the more of this is going to start to ease back because it's like, look, you can be if you. I'm not knocking being environmentally friendly and all this kind of stuff, but putting it above and beyond. Wait. We're running a company here. We have stockholders that we're supposed to be trying to do what's best for this company, what's best for the stockholders to make them money, right? That's
Sure.
the goal here. Um, you can have plenty of diversity. You can have plenty of environmental responsibility. All that's well and good, but if you're doing it just for the sake of diversity, if you're doing it for the sake of raising an ESG score, you're not acting in the best interest of your stockholders. You're
Okay.
not
And so here's
acting
the
in
other
the
thing,
best
Ty.
interest of your
Here's the other
customers.
thing.
Yeah.
If you tell corporations that they need to raise their ESG score, and here's how they do it, they will do it in the cheapest way possible because
Hmm.
that is in their own financial interest to do so.
Yeah.
So that is how you arrive at stupidity, like what we see with that. And I'm just using that because it's next to Disney World, which is what I cover all the time. We could go all over the world, and it's not just the environmental side of this.
No.
Okay.
And it's not just
It's
Disney or not
also
just the entertainment industry. It's everywhere.
right. It's also the other letters in it. And that's why I put out this tweet this morning when I'd had enough of seeing this crap from these corporations. If a corporation is supporting a social movement, it's because it's in their interest, not yours. Wake up.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as this conversation goes, I've been thinking about this for months, because I've see a lot of people. I get comments all the time. I mean, on videos and stuff like this, asking about BlackRock or things like this. I mean, it's kind of become the big boogeyman in the room. And you're right. I just want to make sure everybody understands kind of like how the relationship works out there with
Right.
it. I
Because
mean,
if they don't understand, then all kinds of nonsense can come through. And that's not better. It's not better to believe nonsense just because that conforms to your own worldview. It's better to actually understand how it works. And then when you hear stuff that doesn't match up with the reality, you can go, well, that doesn't actually jive either.
yeah. I mean, you look there. you can't bail everybody out of mistakes or force them into ESG or bail or pay for all the ESG stuff. I mean, it's like I always ask people, it's like, define what you mean by pay for it, or all this kind of stuff. They're funding all of this. I don't know what funding in terms of, like I said, they go out and they're going to buy stock on the open market like anybody else would, and then use that power, that leverage, to force companies to listen to this kind of stuff. And hey, you might want to go down this road. But again, at the end of the day, the company, they got to be willing participants in this. Otherwise, tell me why places like Warner Brothers don't seem to really care about this, or at least don't put any kind of effort. Look at the first 2 or 3 pages of Disney's annual stock report for the annual shareholder meeting coming up here next month in April. It's the whole first 2 pages are all, here's all of our our DEI and ESG. Here's everything we're doing. Look at what Warner Brothers puts out. It's got none of that crap in it.
Right.
And it's they got the same stockholders, but you got to have willing participants at the top. Iger's just kind of one of those guys, and it's like, that's the problem. It's like, as soon as Iger came back in the fray, well, it's like, we had a chance. I don't know if we still have it. I mean, I hope we do. But that's why you kind of take a seat back and you reassess things as time goes on. It's like, with Iger back in, yeah, we might have some changes here. Like, he didn't like Kennedy. Okay, maybe he finally is able to get rid of her. That doesn't mean that all of a sudden Star Wars changes overnight. We hope it does. Hope it gets better. But again, it's just everything right now is in such a state of flux with Disney because of that shift that happened in November. And that's all I keep looking at. Is just, I think we're kind of like taking a seat back and going, okay, what's going to happen from this point out? We wish the best, but let's be cautiously optimistic, right?
Cautious indeed.
Renegade on